Have you ever wondered what happens when a single, thoughtless decision ignites a firestorm of consequences? Maria, a bright-eyed immigrant, had dreamed of a better life in a new country. She found the perfect apartment affordable, spacious, her own piece of hope in a foreign land. But when the landlord denied her application without explanation, she had no idea how far-reaching the repercussions would be. What Mr. Henderson didn't know was that his seemingly insignificant choice would unravel everything he held dear. His mistake would lead him into a battle with the very law he thought he understood. What follows is a story of hope, betrayal, and justice. Maria's journey from rejection to triumph will take you through unexpected twists, shocking revelations, and a fight for what's right. Along the way, she encounters a mysterious figure, a legal expert whose influence and knowledge of the law hold the key to her success. Their guidance, however, is not as simple as it seems. With each step, Maria uncovers hidden truths about the world she thought she understood, and the line between right and wrong becomes more blurred than ever. Prepare for a story that will leave you questioning everything. Maria stood on the busy city sidewalk, her gaze fixed on the apartment building across the street. It was everything she had dreamed of, clean, modern, and nestled in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood far from the crowded streets she had first arrived in. Her heart swelled with anticipation as she clutched the application she had worked so hard to perfect. Her journey from a small village in Africa to this moment had been a whirlwind, filled with struggles, sacrifices, and sleepless nights. Now, this apartment felt like the final piece of the puzzle, a place she could finally call her own. But beneath her calm exterior, there were cracks. Maria's past weighed heavily on her, a past filled with doubt and fear. Though she had arrived, with big dreams and a will to succeed, the unfamiliarity of this new country gnawed at her. Would she truly belong here? Was this just another unreachable dream? Deep down, there was a lingering fear that she might never be enough, that the color of her skin or the accent in her voice might always set her apart. The city around her buzzed with life. People hurried past, unaware of the quiet determination in her chest. Maria had spent years building her new life, facing every obstacle with grit and resilience. Yet, even as she approached the landlord's office, there was a tremor in her hands, a silent question that lingered. Would they see her as the hardworking woman she was, or would she remain just another face in the crowd? Maria's fingers trembled as she clutched the neatly filled out application in her hands. She had double-checked everything, her impeccable credit score, glowing references, and even a personal letter detailing her journey from her small village in Africa to this bustling city. This apartment, just a few blocks from her new job at the bakery, was more than just a place to live. It was the key to her new life. After months of renting a cramped, overpriced room in a shared apartment, this was her chance to settle in, to begin a fresh chapter. She could already see herself sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, gazing out at the tree-lined street, feeling a sense of belonging she had longed for since stepping foot in this country. She arrived early at the landlord's office, eager yet anxious, her mind running through 100 possibilities. She adjusted her blouse, straightened her hair, and took a deep breath before walking in. The office was neat, sterile almost, with beige walls, a wood-paneled desk, and a faint smell of coffee lingering in the air. Behind the desk sat Mr. Henderson, the landlord, a man who, in Maria's brief interaction with him during her first visit, seemed friendly enough. He had spoken to her with a warm smile, asking her about her background and making polite small talk. She had sensed a hint of curiosity in his eyes, but didn't think much of it. After all, who wouldn't be curious about someone starting a new life in a foreign country? Maria, right? Mr. Henderson looked up as she entered, his smile polite, but distant. He motioned for her to sit. I'm glad you came by to discuss the apartment. Maria nodded, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Yes, I'm really excited about the place. It's perfect for me, and I've worked hard to get everything in order. She placed the application on his desk and watched as he sifted through it, skimming over the details. There was a moment of silence, the only sound the soft rustling of paper. Maria's heart pounded in her chest as she fought the urge to speak, to fill the empty space with words, but she knew better. She needed to remain calm, composed. Mr. Henderson's gaze lingered on her name, Maria Ose, before his eyes briefly flickered to her face, then back to the application. He didn't say anything for a moment, but his expression seemed to shift subtly, though Maria couldn't put her finger on why. Finally, he folded the papers and placed them back onto the desk. I'm afraid I can't offer you the apartment, he said, his tone flat, businesslike. He didn't even look up at her, his fingers tapping the edge of the desk absent-mindedly. The place has already been rented out. Maria froze. Her mind raced. But I spoke to you last week, and you said it was available. I filled out the application as requested. Everything's in order. Are you sure? He looked up finally, but the warmth that had been there during their first interaction was absent. I'm sure it's already been rented. Maria's stomach twisted. She wanted to protest, to ask for clarification. But something in his tone told her that questioning him further would be futile. She had to swallow the disappointment, but her pride wouldn't let her leave without some form of explanation. She had worked too hard to get here, too hard to let this rejection stand. But if the apartment has already been rented, then why did you even let me apply? Maria's voice cracked slightly, though she tried to keep it steady. Why wasn't I told sooner? Mr. Henderson's lips tightened, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at her application again, his eyes narrowing, as if looking for something he hadn't noticed before. I'm sorry, Maria. Sometimes things don't work out the way we expect. There's nothing else I can do. She stood up, feeling a wave of confusion, hurt, and frustration wash over her. What was going on? This didn't make sense. The apartment had seemed perfect, and she had done everything by the book. Her heart sank as she left the office, the door closing quietly behind her. She wanted to scream, to demand answers. But all she could do was walk down the hallway and out into the fresh air. As she stepped onto the street, she pulled out her phone, dialing her friend Amina, who worked at the community center. Amina answered after 2 rings. Maria, hey, how did it go? Did they accept you? Maria hesitated for a moment before responding, her voice barely above a whisper. No, they denied me. He said the apartment's already rented. But No. Something didn't feel right. Amina's voice dropped to a concerned tone. What do you mean? Did he give you any reason? No, nothing. Just that it was rented out. But I know I did everything right. I've got a great credit score. My references are solid. He didn't even give me a reason why. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding, Amina suggested, though her voice didn't sound entirely convinced. But if something feels off, maybe you should check it out. You've got rights, Maria. Maria's brow furrowed as she walked slowly down the street. I'm going to find out what's really going on. What Maria didn't know was that Mr. Henderson's decision wasn't as simple as it seemed. There were forces at play that neither she nor he fully understood. And his rejection of her would set off a series of events that would lead to a reckoning neither of them could have predicted. But at this moment, as Maria walked down the street, determined to figure out the truth, she had no idea that her journey was only beginning. The world she had stepped into, the world of housing, power, and discrimination, was far more complicated and far-reaching than she could imagine. Little did she know, Maria's rejection was not the end. It was just the beginning of a battle that would involve more than just her quest for an apartment. The forces at work were far more insidious, and the stakes would prove to be far higher than anyone could have expected. As Maria would soon discover, her fight for justice would take her places she never imagined, bringing her face to face with a truth she wasn't prepared to handle. And Mr. Henderson, in his arrogance, had no idea that his blind decision would soon come back to haunt him. But that was the nature of the world they were in, where the smallest misjudgments could lead to the largest consequences. Maria's mind raced as she walked through the crowded streets of the city, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She had just been denied an apartment, one she thought was the answer to her prayers, but there was something far deeper, far more unsettling about the situation than just a simple rejection. Her thoughts churned in her head, piecing together fragments of the encounter with Mr. Henderson, trying to make sense of it. She didn't buy his story. Something about the way he dismissed her so abruptly, so confidently, made her feel like he wasn't being truthful. He hadn't even looked her in the eye when he told her the apartment was already rented. Was it a lie? Was it just an excuse to cover up something deeper? Maria couldn't shake the feeling that he had made up his mind before even meeting her, that the decision had been based on something other than her application. Her phone buzzed in her hand, breaking her from her thoughts. It was a text from Amina. You get any answers? I've been doing some digging. There are rumors about Mr. Henderson's property. Maria's heart skipped a beat. What rumors? She quickly typed back. What rumors? What do you mean? A few minutes later, Amina replied, I'm hearing that he's been involved in some questionable rental practices. I don't have the details, but I'm going to look into it more. You should be careful, Maria. This might be bigger than just a rejection. Maria stared at the message, a wave of unease washing over her. What was Amina talking about? What could a landlord possibly be hiding? She had no idea, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let this go, not without answers. Not without a fight. With new determination, Maria made her way to the local community center to meet Amina as she walked into the building. Amina was waiting for her at a small table in the corner, a stack of papers in front of her. Her face was serious, her eyes focused. Amina began as soon as she sat down. I've been looking into Henderson's properties. There are some things that don't add up. Maria's breath hitched. What do you mean? Amina leaned in, her voice lowered. There's a pattern here. He's been rejecting a lot of applicants in the same way, and the ones who get accepted, they all have one thing in common. Maria frowned, not following. What do you mean? What's the common factor? Amina hesitated for a moment before continuing. They're all ... white. Or at least, that's the majority. The few who aren't, well, they're the ones who get denied, like you. Maria's stomach twisted. She had suspected something like this, but hearing it out loud made it all the more real. She had been denied not because of her qualifications, but because of her skin color. It wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't just bad luck. This was intentional. It was discrimination. But that doesn't make any sense, Maria muttered. I have a perfect credit score. I'm employed. I've got all the references he asked for. What else could it be? Amina nodded grimly. That's the thing. There's more going on here than just a personal bias. I did some digging, and Henderson has been linked to a group of landlords that has a history of questionable practices. They use subtle tactics to deny certain applicants, especially immigrants and people of color, without it being overt. It's not just about rent, it's about controlling who lives in certain neighborhoods. Maria stared at her, disbelief and anger washing over her. But how can they get away with it? Isn't there some kind of law against this? There are laws. Yes. But enforcing them is another matter. These landlords have a network. They know how to get around the system. It's all very calculated. Amina paused, her fingers tapping the papers on the table. But you can fight this, Maria. You've got rights. Maria's mind was spinning. Every piece of information Amina provided only made the mystery deeper. It wasn't just a simple case of being turned down for an apartment. No, there was a system in place, a structure designed to keep people like her out. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a pattern. And the more Maria learned, the more she realized that this was about more than just one landlord's personal bias. This was a wider issue of systemic discrimination. And it was going unchecked. I'm going to file a complaint, Maria said, her voice steady but filled with determination. I don't care what it takes. I'm not letting him get away with this. Amina's eyes brightened, but there was caution in her voice. You'll need to be careful. If you file a formal complaint, it could get ugly. Henderson will fight back, and he's got resources. He's not going to back down easily. Maria didn't care. She was done being a passive observer in her own life. She had come to this country to build something better, to carve out a space for herself. She wasn't going to let someone like Henderson take that away from her without a fight. Over the next few days, Maria went through every step of the process. She gathered evidence, her application, the emails, the records of the conversation. She contacted legal aid groups and housing advocates, who assured her that she had a solid case. The more she uncovered, the more convinced she became that this wasn't just about one apartment. It was a symptom of a larger issue. One evening, just as Maria was preparing to submit her formal complaint, Amina called her again. I've got something else, she said, her voice tinged with urgency. Henderson's name came up again, but this time, it's tied to something more serious. I need you to meet me. Now. Maria's pulse quickened. What else was there? What else could she possibly uncover? She grabbed her coat and rushed out the door, her heart pounding with both fear and anticipation. When she arrived at the community center, Amina was waiting, her expression tense. She handed Maria a file. I dug deeper, Amina said. Henderson's been evicting tenants for years, people of color, immigrants, anyone who doesn't fit his profile of a good tenant. But here's the kicker. A few months ago, he was involved in a scheme with a real estate development group. They've been buying up properties in the area, pushing out low-income tenants, and turning a profit by flipping these buildings. And guess who the group targets most? Maria's breath caught in her throat as she flipped through the pages. It was all starting to make sense now. This wasn't just a landlord rejecting tenants, it was part of a larger, organized effort to displace people from their homes, to gentrify neighborhoods and make room for wealthier, mostly white tenants. Henderson wasn't just a bad apple. He was part of a much larger system of exploitation. What do we do now? Maria asked, her voice barely a whisper. Amina looked at her, her expression grave but resolute. Now, we make sure he's held accountable, but we need more. We need the truth to come out. And we need to expose the people behind him. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about everyone he's wronged. Maria took a deep breath. She had no idea what the next steps would be, but she was ready to fight, ready to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The stakes were higher than ever, and every piece of information she uncovered only deepened the mystery. The more she learned, the more she realized that this was just the beginning. The truth was out there, and Maria was determined to find it no matter where it led. As the days passed, the weight of her mission grew heavier, but so did her resolve. She had begun this journey seeking a home, but now she found herself at the center of something much larger, something that could change everything. The weight of Maria's decision bore down on her as she sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the stack of documents in front of her. It was late, almost midnight, and the hum of the city outside had quieted, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Amina's words from earlier that day echoed in her mind. Now, we make sure he's held accountable. But we need more. We need the truth to come out. But as Maria sat there, the weight of what she was about to do hit her with full force. The complaints were ready. She had already contacted the local housing authorities and legal aid. She was on the verge of filing the formal complaint, the first step in a battle that could potentially change everything. But there was so much at stake, and she knew that once she made this move, there would be no turning back. Mr. Henderson was no ordinary landlord. He wasn't just some petty bureaucrat who had denied her a place to stay. He was part of a far larger, deeply entrenched system of gentrification, discrimination, and exploitation. And the more Maria uncovered, the more she realized that this was not just about her case. It was about every tenant who had been pushed out, every immigrant who had been unjustly denied a chance at a better life. It was about all the small, hidden injustices that were never brought to light, buried under layers of bureaucratic apathy and institutional indifference. Maria stood up, pacing the room. She could feel her heart racing, the blood pounding in her ears. A deep sense of unease gripped her as she realized that this wasn't just a personal battle. It was bigger than her, bigger than Mr. Henderson. It was about a system that was rigged against people like her, immigrants, people of color, anyone who didn't fit into the narrow mold that the city's elite tried to enforce. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. It was Amina. Maria, you need to hear this. Amina's voice was urgent, her tone tight with worry. I've been digging deeper into Henderson's connections. I found something bigger than I thought. Maria's pulse quickened. What is it? I got a tip from a source inside the real estate development group he's been working with. They've been planning something massive, a new luxury development that will push even more people out of their homes, people just like you and me. It's all connected. Maria, Henderson's rejection of you. It wasn't just a random incident. He's part of a larger scheme to clear out the area and flip the properties for huge profit. And guess what? What? Maria's voice was barely above a whisper, her heart pounding in her chest. They've been targeting immigrants specifically. They want to drive us out of the neighborhood to make room for wealthier tenants, people who fit their profile. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Her suspicions had been right all along. This wasn't just about one apartment, one landlord. This was about something far more sinister. A deliberate and systematic effort to remove people like her from the places they called home. Maria felt her world tilt beneath her feet. Everything she had learned, the denial, the discrimination, the hidden agendas, was all part of something much larger than she had ever imagined. She wasn't just fighting for her own apartment anymore. She was fighting for every immigrant, every marginalized person who had been pushed aside, ignored, and shut out by the powerful few. Tears blurred her vision as the enormity of it all settled in. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was terrified. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. And she was standing on the edge of something that could consume everything she had fought for. A powerful real estate group, a network of corrupt landlords, and the system that allowed them to thrive. They were all aligned against her. And if she followed through with the complaint, there was no going back. She wasn't just exposing one man's bias, she was exposing an entire system built on exploitation and greed. Amina's voice brought her back to reality. Maria, are you there? I'm here, she replied, her voice shaky but determined. What do? We go public. We need to shine a light on this. If we don't, This cycle will continue, and people will keep getting hurt. We can't let them get away with it. Maria stood up, the phone still pressed against her ear. Her hands trembled as she paced the room, the weight of the decision she was about to make settling heavily on her shoulders. A thought flashed through her mind. What if she walked away? What if she let it go? She could easily find another apartment. She had a good job, a solid plan. But she knew that walking away wouldn't solve anything. It would only allow the injustice to continue. No, she couldn't back down. But the truth was, Maria had no idea what she was getting herself into. She knew that, if she went public with this, there would be no turning back. She was about to take on an entire system, one that had the power to crush her. As the minutes ticked by, Maria's mind raced, the stakes escalating with every passing second. What if this led to something even worse? What if Henderson and the developers fought back in ways she couldn't anticipate? A loud knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Maria froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. She peered through the peephole and saw a man standing outside her door. He was tall, dressed in a suit, and holding a briefcase. She didn't recognize him, but something about his presence sent a chill down her spine. She hesitated for a moment before opening the door, and the man introduced himself. Maria Osei. His voice was smooth, almost too calm. Yes, she asked cautiously. I'm Mr. Stone, the man said, his tone businesslike. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Henderson. He would like to speak with you regarding your recent complaint. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She could hear the undertones in his voice. He wasn't here to help. He was here to intimidate. I'm not interested, Maria replied, her voice firm. She wanted to close the door, but something stopped her. She wasn't afraid not anymore. She had come this far. But Mr. Stone stepped forward, blocking the door. Maria, he said, his smile widening. This isn't just about your complaint. It's about something much larger. You don't want to get involved in this any further. Trust me. Maria's stomach twisted, a sense of dread creeping over her. She had no idea how much danger she was in, how deep the web of corruption and greed ran. But one thing was clear. Mr. Henderson and his associates were not going to back down. They would fight with everything they had. And now, Maria had a choice. She could back out, let the system win, and return to her life as it was. Or she could stand her ground, fight with everything she had, and expose the truth, no matter the cost. She closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on her chest. She didn't know what the outcome would be, but she knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back now. She opened the door wide, standing tall. I'm not backing down, she said, her voice steady. Mr. Stone's smile faltered, but he didn't back off. Then you've made a grave mistake, Maria. You have no idea what you're up against. With a sharp nod, he turned and walked away. Maria watched him disappear down the hallway, the door closing softly behind her. She was in this now, and there was no going back. The battle for her apartment, for justice, and for the truth, was just beginning. The legal battle that Maria had started spiraled into something far more significant than anyone had anticipated. As her complaint gained traction, the spotlight turned toward Henderson and the corrupt network of landlords behind him. The media picked up the story, and public outrage grew. Legal aid groups rallied, and more tenants came forward, sharing their own stories of discrimination and abuse at the hands of the real estate developers. The pressure mounted, forcing the housing authorities to act. In the end, Henderson was forced to issue a public apology, and his properties were subjected to thorough investigations. The development project aimed at displacing immigrants and low-income tenants was put on hold indefinitely, its future uncertain. Maria's courage sparked a movement, inspiring others to speak out and challenge the injustices they had faced in silence. For Maria, the victory wasn't just about the apartment. It was about standing up for what was right, about reclaiming dignity in the face of systemic discrimination. Though the battle had been hard fought, it brought justice not only for her but for the countless others who had been silenced by a system built to keep them down. Her courage changed the narrative, reminding everyone that one voice, when united with others, could bring about real change. If you enjoyed this incredible story of transformation, kindness, and unexpected fortunes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and entertain. We bring you captivating tales that touch hearts, spark motivation, and remind us all that anything is possible with the right mindset. So, join our community today, and let's continue this journey of discovery together. Don't forget to like and share. If you believe in the power of small acts changing lives, see you in the next story.